Welcome, friends. Today I'll tell you a story that will make you wonder how well you know the person with whom you share your bed. Did you know that according to research, about 1/4 of married women admit to marital infidelity? Now imagine, you're happily married, have 2 wonderful children, a stable job, a cozy home, and suddenly, one evening, a message accidentally discovered on your wife's phone destroys everything you've believed in for the past 12 years. Jack and Emily met in college. He was a promising engineer. She was a student at the economics department with sparkling eyes and infectious laughter. Their love story developed like a classic romance. A chance meeting in the library, walks together, conversations until dawn, their first kiss under falling snow. Everything was as it should be. They married right after graduating from college. Jack got a job at a large engineering company. Emily began her career in the financial sector. 2 years later, their daughter Alice was born, and 3 years after that, their son Max. From the outside, they looked like the perfect family photos on social media, vacations together, parent-teacher meetings, school plays, just like everyone else. The first 10 years of marriage passed in relative harmony. Of course, there were conflicts, misunderstandings, and fatigue from everyday problems, as in any family, but the foundation of their relationship seemed strong and secure. Jack trusted his wife unconditionally. He was proud of her, her career growth, how she combined work and motherhood. When 3 years ago, Emily received a promotion and began working under the direction of the new financial director, Andrew, Jack was the first to raise a glass to her success. Jack didn't immediately notice how their relationship began to change. The changes were so gradual that he attributed them to fatigue, stress, workload. Emily started coming home later than usual. At first it happened once a week, then 2, 3. "We have an important project. Andrew asked me to stay late," quarterly report. Her explanations sounded convincing. Then came the business trips. Previously Emily rarely traveled for work, but now such trips became almost monthly. She always returned somewhat detached, as if part of her remained elsewhere, in business meetings and corporate dinners. Jack began to notice other changes. Emily started paying more attention to her appearance. A new haircut, updated wardrobe, expensive perfume. She began checking her phone more often, and sometimes Jack noticed how she quickly closed a conversation when he entered the room. However, the most alarming signal was how their intimate life changed. They used to have a healthy and regular intimate relationship, but in recent months, Emily often cited fatigue or headaches. And when they were together, Jack felt that her thoughts were far away. Despite all these signs, Jack refused to believe that something was seriously wrong. He convinced himself that it was just a temporary crisis, that all couples go through such periods. They were just too busy, too tired, too immersed in routine. He tried to be more attentive, brought her flowers, offered to organize a romantic dinner, but Emily seemed not to notice his efforts. On the day that changed everything, there was nothing special. An ordinary Thursday. Jack returned from work earlier than usual. A meeting was canceled, and he decided to surprise Emily, to cook dinner. She wrote that she would be late, but not too late. The children were at their grandmother's, and Jack hoped to spend the evening alone with his wife. He was just taking the lasagna, Emily's favorite dish, out of the oven, when he heard the notification sound. Emily's phone was lying on the kitchen table. Usually Jack didn't look at her messages. It was their unspoken rule to respect each other's personal space. But this time the screen lit up, and he involuntarily glanced at the notification. "I miss you. Yesterday was amazing. I love your laugh when you..." The text was cut off, but the sender was Andrew, work. Jack froze with an oven mitt in his hand. Maybe he misunderstood? Maybe it was some work discussion taken out of context? He put the lasagna on the table and sat down looking at the phone. Maybe just ask Emily? "Honey, you got a message from your boss saying he misses you and that yesterday was amazing. Can you explain?" But something inside told him it wasn't that simple. that all those strange changes in Emily's behavior, all those little doubts he'd been suppressing, might have had a foundation. Jack knew the unlock code for Emily's phone. They never hid them from each other. His hand was shaking when he entered the numbers. The voice of conscience said it was wrong, that he was violating her trust. But hadn't she violated his trust? He opened the messages and found the correspondence with Andrew, and what he read made his heart clench with pain.
Can't wait for tomorrow's trip. Finally, just the two of us, thinking about you every minute. It's so hard to focus on work when you're near. Yesterday was magical. Your eyes, your lips, I already want to repeat it.
The messages dated back to the last 3 months. Photos, words of love, plans for meetings. Each message was like a knife in Jack's heart. Especially painful were those concerning their business trips. Now it became clear that these business trips were just a cover for their secret meetings. Jack didn't remember how long he sat in the kitchen, reading the messages again and again, as if hoping their meaning would somehow change. The lasagna had long gone cold. It had gotten dark outside, but he couldn't force himself to stand up or do anything. His world was crumbling, and he felt absolutely helpless. He heard the key turn in the lock, heard Emily enter the apartment, take off her coat, put down her bag.
Jack, are you home?
Her voice sounded as usual, but now Jack heard the falsity in it. How could he have been so blind, so trusting? Emily entered the kitchen with a smile, but it quickly disappeared when she saw his face, and the phone in his hand.
What are you doing with my phone?
Her voice sounded indignant, but Jack noticed this microscopic pause, this moment of fear when she realized what he might have seen.
I'm reading your messages from Andrew, very fascinating reading. I especially like the part about the business trip to Boston last month, the one where you had, I quote, intensive negotiations until late at night.
Emily turned pale. She opened her mouth as if wanting to say something, but no words came, and at that moment her silence was more eloquent than any justification.
Jack,
She finally uttered, but he raised his hand, stopping her.
How long has this been going on? 3 months? 6 months? A year?
His voice finally faltered, revealing the storm of emotions he was trying to contain. Emily sank into the chair across from him, her eyes filled with tears.
6 months.
She answered quietly. 6 months. Half a year of lies, deception, pretense. Half a year when he believed they were just going through temporary difficulties, when he tried to be a better husband, when he blamed himself for the cooling in their relationship.
Why?
This question escaped on its own, although Jack wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Emily sighed. Tears were now freely flowing down her face, but Jack felt no pity, only pain and anger.
I didn't plan this, Jack, I swear. It just happened. Andrew understands me like no one else. With him I feel alive.
Each word was like a blow.
And with me you feel dead?
No, not like that. Just our relationship became routine. Work, home, kids. We don't really talk, don't spend time together.
And so you decided that the best solution was to cheat on me with your boss? Instead of talking to me, instead of trying to change something?
Emily shook her head.
I know there's no excuse for what I did. I got confused, Jack. I didn't want to hurt you.
But you did, and not just me. Did you think about the children, about our family, about what will happen when everyone finds out?
These words seemed to sober Emily up.
No one will find out. Jack, please, let's talk about this. I know I acted terribly, but I don't want to lose our family.
Jack looked at the woman he thought he knew better than anyone in the world and didn't recognize her. How could she so easily betray everything they had? And now she expects them to just talk about it?
What about Andrew? Are you ready to end the relationship with him?
Emily hesitated, and in that hesitation, Jack saw the whole truth.
You love him.
This was not a question but a statement. Emily lowered her eyes.
I don't know what I feel, Jack. Everything is so complicated.
No, Emily, it's not complicated. It's very simple. You chose him over our family. You chose your feelings over your obligations, over your children.
These words hit the mark. Emily raised her head.
I never chose anything over the children. I love Alice and Max more than anything in the world.
Then how could you risk their happiness, their stability, their family?
Emily had no answer to this question. She sat with slumped shoulders, tears continuing to flow down her face. Jack felt a sudden fatigue. The anger that had sustained him up to this point began to subside, leaving only a huge, all-consuming emptiness.
I'm leaving. I need to think. Don't know when I'll be back or if I'll be back at all.
Emily jumped up.
Jack, please don't leave like this. Let's talk. We can fix this. We can go to a family therapist.
But Jack was no longer listening. He took his jacket and left the apartment, leaving behind 12 years of marriage and the woman who had just broken his heart. The next few days were like a fog. Jack stayed at a friend's place, turned off his phone, took leave from work. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think of anything but those messages. Images of Emily and Andrew together haunted him even in his dreams. He tried to understand where he had made a mistake. Maybe he wasn't attentive enough, too immersed in work, too accustomed to their routine, or was it not about him at all but about Emily, who couldn't remain faithful to her promises? On the third day, Jack turned on his phone. 27 missed calls from Emily, dozens of messages. The last one was sent an hour ago.
Jack, I need to talk to you. It's important. Please call when you see this message.
He hesitated. Part of him wanted to never talk to her again, just file for divorce and start a new life. But another part, the one that still loved her despite the betrayal, the one that thought about the children, about 12 years of life together, about all those happy moments they had. This part won. He called. Emily answered after the first ring as if holding the phone in her hand.
Jack, thank you for calling. Can we meet? We need to talk.
Her voice sounded strange, not as he expected, not guilty or pleading, but tense, concerned. They arranged to meet at a cafe near their house, neutral territory. Jack came first and chose a table in the corner, away from other visitors. He didn't know what to expect from this meeting, didn't know what he would say to Emily, but he knew he had to stay strong, not give in to emotions, not allow her to manipulate him. Emily appeared 10 minutes later. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes, pale skin. She sat across from him, nervously fidgeting with a napkin.
Thank you for coming. I don't know where to start.
Start with the truth, at least now.
Emily nodded.
You're right. I owe you the truth.
She took a deep breath as if gathering strength.
Jack, I ended the relationship with Andrew.
Jack said nothing. He waited for her to continue.
I told him I couldn't live like this anymore. That I couldn't destroy our family. That I made a terrible mistake.
And how did he react?
Emily's face changed. Something appeared that Jack didn't expect to see. Fear.
He didn't take it well. At first, he begged me not to end everything. Said he loved me, that we were made for each other. But when I insisted, he changed.
Jack watched his wife carefully, feeling anxiety growing inside.
He's threatening me, Jack. He says if I don't come back to him, he'll ruin my career. That he'll tell everyone in the company about our relationship, make me look in an unfavorable light. That I'll never find a job in our city again.
She took out her phone and showed Jack the latest messages from Andrew. Threats, insults, promises to make her life unbearable.
That's not all. He says he has photos, personal photos, and that he'll send them to everyone, including you, if I don't come back to him.
Jack felt anger growing inside him, not toward Emily, she was still guilty of cheating, but toward this man who was now threatening her, who was trying to control her through fear and blackmail.
When did you last speak to him?
Yesterday. He came to the house when the kids were at school, stood under the windows, called nonstop. I didn't open the door, and then he started shouting. The neighbors heard. He only left when I threatened to call the police.
Jack was shocked. He had imagined Andrew as a seducer, as the man who destroyed his marriage, but now he saw him in a completely different light, as a predator, as a manipulator who used his power and position to get what he wanted.
Jack, I know I have no right to ask for your help after what I did. I understand if you want a divorce. I deserve it. But I'm afraid for myself, for the children. I don't know what to do.
At that moment, Jack realized that despite all the pain Emily had caused him, he still cared about her. She was still the mother of his children, and he couldn't allow this man to destroy her life, their lives.
Did you save the messages, call records?
He asked practically. Emily nodded.
Yes, everything is there. And video from the entry phone when he came yesterday.
Good, this might be useful if we need to go to the police.
Emily looked at him in surprise.
We?
Jack sighed.
Emily, what you did, it broke my heart. I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully forgive you or trust you again, but I won't let this man intimidate the mother of my children. We'll deal with this together.
Tears rolled down Emily's cheeks.
Thank you. I don't deserve your kindness.
This isn't kindness, it's responsibility. For our children, for our family, whatever it may be in the future.
They spent the next few hours developing a plan. Jack suggested recording all of Andrew's threats, collecting all messages and evidence of his stalking, and then consulting a lawyer. If necessary, they would file a report with the police and prosecute him for stalking and blackmail. Emily agreed. For the first time in a long time, they were acting as a team, solving a problem together. As they were leaving the cafe, Jack unexpectedly asked,
Why did you decide to end the relationship with him? The truth.
Emily stopped. She looked at Jack for a long time as if seeing him for the first time.
Because I realized that what I felt for him wasn't real. It was an illusion, an escape from reality. And the real thing, the real family, real love, real support. I already had all of this. With you.
Jack didn't answer. He wasn't ready to accept these words. Wasn't ready to forgive. But they stuck in his soul, leaving a small crack in the wall of anger and pain he had built. In the following weeks, they worked together to stop Andrew's harassment. They consulted a lawyer, gathered all the evidence, and eventually filed a report with the police. Andrew received an official warning, and when that didn't help, a court injunction was issued prohibiting him from approaching Emily. At the company where Emily worked, they learned about what was happening. Andrew was fired for unacceptable behavior and abusive position. His threats to distribute compromising photos were never realized. Either they never existed, or he finally understood the seriousness of his situation and the potential legal consequences of such actions. For Emily, it was a difficult period. She lost the job she valued so much, but colleagues, learning the truth about what happened, supported her. Several people even testified to Andrew's inappropriate behavior. Within a month, she found a new position at another company, with a lower salary, but in a healthier work environment. As for Jack and Emily's marriage, everything was much more complicated. After resolving the situation with Andrew, they found themselves face to face with the consequences of her infidelity. The wound was too deep to simply move on.
I don't know if I'll ever be able to forget what I saw in those messages. Every time I close my eyes, I see those words,
Jack said during one of their conversations. Emily understood. She didn't try to justify herself or diminish her guilt.
I'm not asking you to forget, Jack. I know that's impossible. I'm asking to give us a chance, not for my sake, but for everything we had, for the children.
The children. Alice and Max noticed that something was happening between their parents. They saw the tension, heard muffled conversations behind closed doors, noticed how their father sometimes didn't come home at night. This was reflected in their behavior. Alice became withdrawn and Max began to show aggression at school.
We need help, not just the two of us, but the children too,
Jack admitted after Max's teacher called them to discuss his conflict with classmates. They went to a family therapist, first just Jack and Emily, then they started taking the children. These were difficult, emotionally draining sessions. Jack revealed his pain and anger Emily, her sense of guilt and remorse. The therapist helped them express emotions constructively, taught them to listen to each other, showed how their conflict affected the children. Therapist. Rebuilding trust is not an event, but a process, and this process requires time, patience, and work from both sides. For Emily, this process meant complete transparency, open access to her messages, calls, location. She understood the necessity of these measures, although sometimes felt like she was under a microscope, but she was ready for anything to regain her husband's trust. For Jack, it was a journey from bitterness and resentment to acceptance. He learned to separate his sense of self-worth from his wife's actions, realizing that her infidelity spoke to her own weaknesses, not his shortcomings as a husband. 6 months after that night when he discovered the messages, Jack and Emily sat in the same cafe where they had met after her confession. This time the atmosphere was different, not as tense, but still fragile.
I missed us, the way we were before,
Jack unexpectedly confessed. Emily carefully took his hand.
We will never be the same as before, but maybe we can become something else, something new, more honest.
Jack didn't pull his hand away. It was a small but significant gesture. That evening when they returned home, Jack hugged Emily for the first time in a long time. Not passionately, not romantically, just held her tightly, as if checking if his body still remembered the shape of her body.
I don't forgive you, not yet, but I'm working on it,
he whispered in her ear. It was a turning point. Not a happy ending, not a magical healing, but simply the realization that they both wanted to move in the same direction, even if in small steps. A year passed. Alice and Max started smiling again. Family dinners no longer passed in oppressive silence. Jack and Emily were learning to get to know each other again, discovering new facets in their relationship.
You know what I realized? I realized that love is a choice every day, every minute, and sometimes it's a damn hard choice.
Jack said one day as they were walking in the park while the children rode bicycles ahead. Emily squeezed his hand tightly.
I choose you, Jack, every day, and I always will.
She knew she would never completely erase her mistake. The scar on their relationship would remain forever. But scars make us stronger, remind us of the trials we've endured and the lessons we've learned. That evening, putting the children to bed, Jack looked at his family, at Emily reading a story to Max, at Alice showing him her new drawing, and understood that, despite everything that had happened, he didn't regret his decision to fight for this family. Because in the end, true love is manifested not in perfect moments, but in the ability to go through the darkest times and still choose each other. And although their story wasn't and they lived happily ever after, it was their story. Real, complex, with ups and downs, and maybe that's why it was more valuable than any fairy tale. This story is not over yet. I will definitely find out what happened next and tell you about it. Stay tuned to the channel. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to avoid missing new stories about love, betrayal, and dirty laundry found on the vastness of Reddit. And in the next episode, we will analyze a story about a wife who cheated on her husband with his best friend. So don't miss it. See you in the next video.